Okay, let's dive in. We often talk about market growth driven by, the usual suspects, innovation, demographics, economic cycles. But increasingly, consumer values, things like ethical sourcing or religious requirements, they aren't just influencing markets. They're actively shaping them in some really big and sometimes, frankly, surprising ways.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it, seeing how these deeply held values, sometimes even ones that seem niche, can actually translate into, well, substantial economic forces. It really shows the power of consumer choice when people are informed and kind of aligned around specific principles.
Absolutely. And that brings us right to the topic for our deep dive today. We're looking at a very specific and I think fascinating example of this trend, the global halal eyeliner market. We've got our hands on a market research outlook report, and it gives us a great window into the numbers, but also the story behind this growth.
Right. And our mission here isn't just, talking about makeup. We want to unpack the scale of this growth, see where it's happening geographically, and maybe most importantly, explore what this very specific market tells us about broader global consumer trends and how values are impacting commerce, worldwide. This report really highlights how catering to specific demands can carve out pretty significant market segments.
And believe us, when you see the growth figures this report projects,
Yeah.
it's pretty striking. This isn't just minor change. It looks like a rapidly expanding market.
So, okay, let's set the stage. The big picture numbers. Globally, this halal eyeliner market, the report says it was valued at $5,315.9 million. That was back in 2021.
Okay, hold on. Over $5 billion just a couple of years ago. That's already a pretty solid starting point, wouldn't you say?
It is, yeah, significant base. And the report shows it rising to $7,178.8 million in 2025.
Right. So adding nearly $2 billion in value in just, what, 4 years? That's quite a steep climb early on.
Precisely. And then looking further out, the projection for 2033, it's a remarkable $13,091.9 million.
Wow. Okay, let me just process that. From around 5.3 billion in 2021, potentially soaring past 13 billion by 2033. That's more than doubling the market size in just over a decade.
Yeah, that kind of trajectory is hard to ignore, really, for any market segment, specific or not. The report translates this into a compound annual growth rate, CAGR, of 7.8% for that whole period, 2021 through 2033. And that's, a very healthy, consistent rate of expansion projected over more than 10 years.
That's 7.8% CAGR. Yeah, that's impressive, especially, like you said, for such a specific product category.
Yeah.
But it brings up the core question, the why behind it all, which the report starts to get into. What's actually driving this kind of rapid, sustained growth for, specifically, halal eyeliner?
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. The report highlights the primary driver as the rise of ethical and religious conscious beauty preferences. And these preferences are going increasingly mainstream globally. So, halal in this context for cosmetics like eyeliner means the product meets specific Islamic law requirements. It's about ingredients and production. Things like avoiding alcohol, certain animal-derived ingredients, especially from non-halal sources, and also ensuring ethical sourcing and manufacturing.
Right. So it's not just about the color or if it smudges. It's about the actual integrity and origin of the product aligning with a particular value system or religious requirement.
Hmm.
But how does a market defined by these sort of specific guidelines achieve such rapid global scale? I mean, it makes sense in some regions perhaps, but globally.
That's the really critical piece the report seems to illuminate. It's not confined. The demand is expanding significantly beyond, let's say, traditionally expected markets. Because it isn't just about devout religious practice for every single person buying these products. It's becoming part of this broader, conscious consumerism movement. Consumers, especially younger generations, across all sorts of different cultural backgrounds, they're just becoming more aware, more demanding about the values, the ethics, the ingredients behind what they buy.
Okay, so it's a convergence then. You've
Yeah.
got people specifically seeking halal products for religious reasons, sure. Plus you have this growing group of consumers worldwide who are maybe just looking for products free from certain things, ethically sourced, more transparent production. And the halal certification kind of acts as a clear signal for those criteria too.
Exactly that, yes. The halal certification provides a recognized standard, and that standard resonates with a wider audience who might be concerned about ingredient purity, ethical production, transparency. It effectively brings what might seem like a niche religious requirement into the broader ethical beauty discussion. And of course, as brands respond and make these certified products more available everywhere, awareness grows, and that drives demand even further.
That's a really fascinating case study, how shared values, even if people arrive at them from different starting points, can unlock serious market potential when brands catch on and align. Okay, so with that global picture and the why sort of established, where is this growth actually happening? Let's dig into the
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
why sort of established. Where is this growth actually happening? Let's dig into the regional numbers from the report.
Right. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the growth isn't perfectly uniform, no, but it is remarkably widespread. Asia Pacific, according to the projections, is said to be the dominant market by 2033. They're looking at a value of 4,078.1 million there. And APAC also holds the highest regional CAGR, the compound annual growth rate, at 8.3%.
Okay, over 4 billion just in APAC by 2033. That's a huge slice of the total market. Which countries within that region are really pushing that number?
Well, China is a massive player. It's projected to reach $1,468.1 million by 2033, with its own CAGR of 8.4%. And just to give a sense of its journey, it was about $556.7 million back in 2021, growing to maybe $771.4 million in 2025. So big numbers. But interestingly, the report highlights India as having the highest individual country CAGR mentioned within APAC. That's at 8.9%. We also see strong growth mentioned for Japan at 7.9%, South Korea at 7.8%, and the report specifically calls out Southeast Asia as a whole block, having a high combined CAGR of 8.7%.
Interesting. So China's the biggest chunk by value, but India's growth rate is projected to be slightly faster within the region. Okay, what does the report say about North America?
North America is also very significant, projected to reach $3,593.7 million by 2033. That's with a 7.3% CAGR overall for the region. Now, the U.S. is the largest market there by far, expected to hit $2,745.6 million by 2033. But what's interesting is the nuance in growth rates again. The U.S. itself has a 7.2% CAGR listed, but Canada is actually slightly higher at 7.1%. And Mexico is also growing strongly at 7.5%.
Fascinating, isn't it? Seeing those small differences in growth speed even within one region like North America. How does Europe compare then? Similar size?
Very similar, actually. Europe is projected to be basically neck and neck with North America by 2033, also listed at $3,593.7 million. Its regional CGR is slightly higher at 7.4%. The report shows quite a bit of diversity in growth rates across European countries, though. The UK and Germany both have CAGRs of 7.8%. Germany, for instance, the values shown go from $400 million in 2021 to $538.5 million in 2025, projected to reach $979.3 million by 2033. Spain actually has the highest European TGR mention at 8.0%. Then on the, let's say, lower end for Europe in this report, Russia's mentioned at 6.3%, and Luxembourg comes in with the lowest global CGR mentioned anywhere in the report at 6.4%.
Okay, so Spain's the growth leader in Europe for this market. Russia and Luxembourg a bit slower, but still showing growth. What about South America?
South America, yeah, it's smaller in terms of overall market value compared to the others we've discussed so far, but the report points to some very strong growth rates there. Brazil is the largest market, projected at $360.9 million by 2033, with an 8.1% CAGR. Argentina is close behind at 8.0%. Colombia is notably high at 8.5%. Peru at 7.9%, and Chile actually has the highest CAGR mentioned for South America at 8.6%.
Those are impressive percentages across the board in South America, definitely, even if the total market size is smaller for now. Okay, finally, the Middle East and Africa region.
Right. The source highlights some really standout growth rates in the Middle East and Africa, too. And here's a point that, honestly, it jumps out when you look at the data. South Africa. South Africa is actually mentioned as having the highest individual country CAGR globally, a stunning 9.1%. Just to give you a sense of its scale, its value was around $67.3 million in 2021, growing to maybe $91 million in 2025, and projected to hit $183.2 million by 2033. Turkey is also very high at 8.9%, Egypt at 8.2%, and Nigeria at 8.3%.
Wow. South Africa having the highest global growth rate for halal eyeliner. That is genuinely surprising. And it really underlines how widespread this values-driven demand has become, doesn't it? It's definitely not just concentrated where you might initially expect.
Exactly. That's the key takeaway, I think. When we synthesize all these numbers from the report, what we see is this picture of consistent, strong growth across every single region and country detailed. Asia Pacific might be the regional powerhouse in total value by 2033, yes, but specific countries like South Africa, India, Turkey, several. In South America, they're showing particularly high percentage growth rates.
And the crucial point, as we discussed earlier, is that this growth isn't limited to areas traditionally associated with large Muslim populations.
Yeah.
We're seeing massive expansion and significant market value in North America, in Europe, and in major economies like China. It just powerfully reinforces this idea that conscious consumerism, whether it's driven by religious adherence, ethical concerns, ingredient awareness, all sort of captured under this Hall standard here. It's a potent and increasingly global economic force.
Absolutely, and the scale alone is striking. Going from just over $5 billion in 2021 to potentially over $13 billion by 2033, that doubling, more than doubling of market value in just over a decade. Well, it's not a minor blip, is it? It signals a significant market shift being driven by consumer values.
So the clear takeaway from this deep dive, it seems, is that the halal eyeliner market, while it might sound niche at first glance, really serves as this powerful, concrete example. An example of how ethical and religious values are directly translating into significant economic growth and actively reshaping consumer markets all around the world. Diving into specific market data like this report offers, it doesn't just give you numbers. It reveals these fascinating undercurrents, these global cultural shifts and evolving consumer priorities.
Yeah, it really underscores that understanding what consumers truly value right down to specific ingredient needs or production requirements is becoming absolutely essential for companies looking for growth. Satisfying these values-based demands seems to be unlocking massive market potential.
Absolutely. And it really leaves you thinking, doesn't it? Beyond halal beauty, what other product categories or maybe even entire industries might be poised for similar explosive growth? Or maybe they're already experiencing it, driven by these increasingly aware consumers who prioritize specific values, ethics, or religious requirements in their buying decisions. And maybe more fundamentally, how might companies need to adapt everything they're sourcing, production, certifications, marketing to authentically serve these sophisticated and values-driven buyers in the years to come? That's definitely something worth mulling over as you watch global markets continue to evolve.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving into a pretty fascinating corner of the market today, halal eyeliner.
Yeah.
Now, you might think that sounds super specific, maybe even niche,
Mm-hmm.
but the source material we've been looking at, it shows it's actually wrapped up in much bigger themes. Ethics, culture, and some really clever innovation too.
Definitely.
We've got reports here
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
and some really clever innovation too.
Definitely.
We've got reports here laying out the key forces, pushing its growth, the things holding it back, and the trends really shaping where it's going.
Exactly. And our mission here is
Yeah.
basically to cut through some of that noise, understand what's really driving this specific, but rapidly growing sector.
It's a great way to see how these big global consumer trends are meeting cultural and religious values.
In a really interesting way, yeah.
So what's really pushing this market forward then? What are the big drivers?
Well, maybe the biggest engine is this strong demand for products that line up with ethical and religious values. People are actively looking for cosmetics, free from harsh chemicals, alcohol, animal ingredients, the standard halal requirements.
Right, and eyeliner is such a staple product, isn't it? Especially popular in places like Southeast Asia, the Middle East.
Absolutely. So there's a ready base there, shoppers who really prioritize these principles.
And that demand gets a huge boost from, just demographics.
A massive boost. You look at the numbers, the global Muslim population, it's projected to hit nearly 30% by 2050.
Wow, 30%.
Yeah. That kind of growth is a direct, really significant force. It fuels demand for halal products and is pushing the big global brands to notice, to expand their halal lines.
And you've also got governments getting involved. That adds a layer of legitimacy, trust.
Totally. Support from authorities, especially in key markets, think Malaysia, Indonesia, the UAE, it means clearer rules, better certification.
Which helps consumers feel confident.
Exactly. And it actually makes it easier, maybe safer, for international brands to jump into those markets too. Builds more confidence all around.
Okay, so it sounds like a market with some strong tailwinds, but what are the hurdles? What's holding it back?
Right, there are definitely challenges. One big one is sort of limited knowledge and actual misconceptions.
Especially outside Muslim majority areas.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people just see halal and think only religious rules. They miss that it often also means things like cruelty-free, safe ingredients, ethical production.
So that narrow view limits its appeal. People who might otherwise be interested, say, for ethical reasons, don't realize it fits.
Precisely. It restricts that broader base of, conscious consumers.
And that probably links into the cost thing, too.
It does. Meeting those strict halal standards, finding certified ingredients, following specific processing, packaging rules, it just costs more.
Higher certification costs, compliance costs.
Right. And that's a significant barrier. It's tough, especially for smaller brands trying to compete on price in what's already a crowded beauty market.
And then there's the standardization issue you mentioned.
Yeah, that makes the cost challenge even tougher. There aren't really universal halal guidelines, internationally speaking.
So the rules change depending on the country.
Significantly, sometimes.
Yeah.
So a product might be perfectly fine, approved in one place, but then face delays or need extra expensive certifications somewhere else. It really hinders scaling globally.
Okay. But it's not all challenges. The innovation side sounds really interesting.
Oh, it is. A key trend is brands getting clever about combining attributes.
How so?
They're offering products that aren't just halal, but also tick the boxes for cruelty-free and vegan.
Ah, smart. Broadens the appeal.
Massively. Especially with younger consumers like Gen Z, millennials, globally, really North America, Europe. They often value sustainability and ethics right alongside any religious criteria.
And technology must play a role here too, e-commerce.
Oh, absolutely crucial. The rise of e-commerce, the power of influencers, it's huge. Brands use social media, they bypass old retail barriers, connect directly with people worldwide.
So you see online-only halal brands popping up.
Yeah, offering loads of variety, even customized stuff to that younger, tech-savvy audience.
And you mentioned a specific innovation that sounded fascinating, the Wudhu-friendly eyeliner.
Right. This is where it gets really clever.
Hmm.
So Wudhu is the ritual washing before prayer.
Okay.
These eyeliners are engineered specifically so water can actually pass through them during washing.
Without smudging or fading.
Exactly. Without losing performance afterwards. It's a perfect example of brands investing in R&D, really thinking about how to blend practicality with spirituality for their customers.
That's pretty neat.
It really is. So what we're seeing is, a dynamic market driven by strong forces like demographics and ethical demand, but navigating these specific hurdles like the misconceptions and the standardization gaps.
But using innovation to tackle those consumer needs directly.
Yeah, rapid innovation.
Right. So thinking about all this, if you're a consumer or maybe someone just watching market trends, what does this signal?
Good question.
Like, how might things change if there was more education about what halal certification really means? Or, if we eventually saw more international standards, how might that reshape this whole landscape? Something to mull over.
Definitely something to think about.
Yep.
And this deep dive, it was based on excerpts from a report by Cognitive Market Research.
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai